Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
This is the Daily Memphian Politics Podcast. I'm Bill Dries. The main event, Memphis City Councilman Chase Carlisle on the new push for consolidation. Top of the podcast, mask mandates return as a political hot topic along with vaccination mandates. Ahead of the politics, these are the numbers as we record this Thursday, August 5th. 4,383 active COVID cases in Shelby County. More than 25% of them, a quarter, are cases in children. The 7-day average for new COVID cases in the county is 478. The week before, the average was 294. The Delta variant is 98% of these cases here in Shelby County. For 10 days, the number of children with COVID symptoms and those with COVID who are seriously ill admitted to respiratory units and critical care units at Le Bonheur has been rising by both categories in a sustained manner as some schools have already returned to class and more are to start their new school year next week. Among children in Shelby County, ages 12 to 17, 17.4% of them are fully vaccinated. Children younger than 12 are not eligible. This just a few weeks after state legislators in Nashville wigged out over state health department brochures promoting vaccinations for children 12 and older, some threatening to abolish the state health department. The administration of Tennessee Governor Bill Lee then reacted by firing the state health official over the vaccination program and suspended promotion of any and all childhood immunizations and vaccinations, including canceling reminders through the health department to children of their appointments for the second doses of the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines. With that in mind, the Memphis City Council approving a resolution this past week calling for a return to at least a citywide mask mandate. The council approved one outright earlier in the pandemic. Since then, the state has eliminated that as a possibility. Councilmember Dr. Jeff Warren, probably the most vocal and aggressive advocate of masking from the outset of the pandemic, sponsored the resolution. He was unable to vote on it, though, because he tested positive for COVID a week ago. Councilmember Patrice Robinson also unable to vote on it because she is quarantined after exposure to someone with the virus. Robinson and Warren participating in council committee sessions online, but they could not participate or vote in the full council session because emergency provisions allowing such remote voting during the pandemic have expired. The day after the council vote, county commissioners in committee sessions set a vote for their Monday, August 9th session on reinstating a countywide mask mandate through the Shelby County Health Department. And new County Health Director Dr. Michelle Taylor says if the commission approves what is a resolution expressing the sentiment of the commission, she could act on it that same day or sometime the day after. The most recent local health director for Shelby County follows the Centers for Disease Control national guidance of recommending but not mandating face masks. Shelby County Mayor Lee Harris says there is no legal path that allows him to require county employees to be vaccinated, but he's preparing to require that unvaccinated county employees must undergo weekly testing in order to return to work with a 2 to 3 week grace period for them to arrange for the vaccinations. The resolution calling for a countywide mask mandate proposed by Commissioner Edmund Ford Jr. and amended by Commissioner Van Turner to include that such a mandate would be coordinated with other agencies around enforcement. Turner warning Taylor that a decision to renew a countywide mask mandate will be political and that it was a factor in the state's reaction that prompted a change in leadership at the county health department that in turn brought Taylor to the helm of the organization. Taylor telling commissioners she can handle the political heat. State House Speaker Cameron Sexton already talking about possibly calling the legislature back into session before the end of the year if there are school districts that do not begin the school year with in-person classes and no mask mandates or vaccine mandates. He did that as the state released achievement test scores confirming learning loss in the last school year attributed to the pandemic. The legislature passed a law that bans the hybrid in-person and online class schedules used in one form or another by all of Shelby County's 6 suburban school systems. Some of those school systems now setting up separate virtual schools for students to go all online because of the state law. Shelby County schools set to return to in-person classes as this podcast airs with a mask requirement on SCS campuses. If a special session to cut state education funding is under consideration, how much of a reach is a special session to also cut state funding to local governments with some form of mask and vaccine mandates that are opposed by Governor Bill Lee and the Republican supermajorities in the State House and the State Senate? The city of Germantown thinking about requiring its city employees to get vaccinated. There are some second thoughts about that as we record. Our Abigail Warren reporting that the city's attorneys at one point believed the requirements ordered by the city's administration were legal and defensible in court. But the state house's Republican caucus is questioning that, saying the state law passed earlier this year barring a vaccination mandate when there are religious objections or, quote, by right of conscience is clear. Meanwhile, a dentist at St. Jude, Christopher Rowland, organizing an East Memphis chapter of the group Parents Rise TN to fight mask and vaccine mandates in schools. Our Jane Roberts reporting St. Jude was the first major employer and hospital locally to require employees to be vaccinated by next month or go on unpaid leave for several months. Back to Taylor, the County Commission's committee discussion, her first since her appointment by Mayor Lee Harris, was confirmed by the body, and Taylor already mapping a different approach and take to a difficult job than her predecessor, Elisa Haushalter. Another new arrival, Memphis Police Director C.J. Davis, also showing some early moves in different areas. The slow down Memphis traffic saturation getting underway this month. And Davis says look for the Mount Moriah corridor of the interstate as one of the areas police, the sheriff's office, and the Tennessee Highway Patrol will focus on for not only reckless driving, but also interstate shootings. That based on data that shows that's where a good number of the road shooting incidents have happened in the last year or so. And some of the city's federal ARPA funding, American Rescue Plan Act funding, will go to set up a new police bureau to focus on non-fatal shootings and other forms of aggravated assaults. At a town hall by council members Carlisle, Conrad, and Morgan at Second Presbyterian Church recently, lots of talk among the council members and the more than 100 citizens there about a new try at dropping residency requirements for police. Davis not committing one way or the other on waiving residency requirements, something her predecessor, Michael Rawlings, was a vocal advocate for. Davis calling the issue complex and saying she looks forward to the discussion. 2 days later, at the Memphis branch NAACP's Freedom Fund online event, Davis saying just police showing up after a crime is committed is not the answer in and of itself, since that happens after something has gone wrong. She got high marks from both groups. DeAndre Brown, co-founder of Frazier's Lifeline to Success Reentry Program, is the new director of county government's Office of Reentry, succeeding Harold Collins, the former Memphis City Council member, who recently became deputy director of the County Corrections Division, where he will continue to work in reentry programs as well with those about to leave prison. The Hernando de Soto Bridge reopened eastbound and westbound, and next month the Arkansas Department of Transportation does its first inspection of the bridge across the Mississippi River since the damage that prompted the immediate shutdown of the bridge May 11th was discovered. Our Matt Stroud, working with the Arkansas Nonprofit News Network, reports RDOT has not determined how the September inspection will work in light of the failures to notice the damage to a box beam supporting the bridge for several years. Two federal investigations of the road to the May 11th shutdown via 911 are ongoing. After that damage was repaired, a complete inspection of the entire bridge span turned up 17 other areas with enough damage to warrant new steel plating over those sections as well. In a Daily Memphian op-ed, Congressman Steve Cohen saying he joins the Greater Memphis Chamber in favoring a third bridge for cars and trucks across the river at Memphis. But Cohen says before he can request funding for a federal environmental review of that possibility, Governor Bill Lee and his Department of Transportation will have to identify that as a priority. U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said basically the same thing during his trip to the bridge this past June. The conservative PAC Club for Growth tracking who missed the most votes in the Tennessee legislature in this year's session, as reported by the Tennessee Journal. This is the percentage of 2,244 House votes by 99 representatives and 2,105 Senate votes among 33 senators, the average being 8% of votes missed in the House and 6% in the Senate. In the Shelby delegation to the legislature, Democrat Katrina Robinson tops the list of all 33 state senators from across the state, missing 40% of the votes. Memphis Democrat Sarah Kyle missed 22%, Memphis Democrat Ramesh Akbari with 19%. Waynesboro State Representative David Byrd atop the State House list, missing all 2,244 votes as he was out with COVID. In the Shelby House delegation, Democrat Barbara Cooper was tops, missing 34.9% of the votes. Democrat Antonio Parkinson missing 17.8%, followed by Democrat Joe Towns at 16%. With a remake of City Solid Waste Services still underway by the administration of Mayor Jim Strickland, City Council members are turning over some thoughts of their own about a broadening of those services. Beyond getting trash picked up on the day it is supposed to be picked up, some on the council wondering aloud if solid waste services should be more than what is left on the curb. That broader scope was what motivated Councilmember J.B. Smiley Jr. to propose the new eviction ordinance approved by the council that emphasizes what is already city policy, albeit a policy widely ignored. In an eviction setout, landlords cannot put someone's belongings in a public right-of-way, on a sidewalk or median, or in the street. That's enforced by Public Works, along with mowing vacant lots and keeping up with illegal dumping. Councilmember Martavius Jones, during budget season, argued that solid waste pickup should include cleaning up vacant lots and illegal dumping. It's been a while since the council had a discussion about this, but it is still an issue. This past week, it came up rather suddenly at the end of a Public Works briefing in committees on the city's policy for cutting vacant lots. Councilmember Jamita Swearingen reminding us that trash and its pickup is the most basic, relatable, and persistent issue there is at City Hall.
But everything looks trashy in the city of Memphis. I've never seen Memphis look like this before. It is dirty. It is trashy. You have things everywhere. They're not picking up the trash, the dumpsters, so they're just dumping it everywhere. When they cut the yards, they cut the trash, and they got trash all over the median, all over the side streets. It's embarrassing. And who has to take the blame? We do. We do. They don't call you. They call us. It's embarrassing. And something needs to be done. This has gone too far. We've given money. We've changed staff. We've told the administration. We've walked the streets. And still nothing has been done. This looks worse than New York. It looks worse than Detroit. It's ridiculous. And it's embarrassing. And they call us first. Our staff is being overworked because people have complaints. And I'm not fussing, but I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed because they blame it on the council people. that represent the district and the super council people that represent the district. And there has not been an improvement in months. Months. I mean, I've never seen Memphis look so despicable. Trash. Garbage.
Joining us now is Memphis City Council member Chase Carlisle to talk about another try at city-county consolidation. Let's talk about timelines first before we dive into the details of this. Councilman, are you ready to go to the council with a resolution to appoint a charter commission to draft a consolidation charter, or do you have a timeline for making that move?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, really excited to be here and be back. We would like to have a charter commission vote in the very near future. I would like to bring it sooner rather than later, just because under state law, once the charter commission is formed or voted on, formed by both bodies, they have 5 days to convene an organizing meeting and then up to 9 months to research, explore, and write a constitution. And that constitution has to be made public 80 to 100 days. So let's just say 120 days so the public has time before the next countywide election. And so if we were going to have something on the ballot by, say, August, which may be off the table, or November of 2022, we have to start moving soon.
Okay. All right. As you know, it's been about 11 years since a consolidation charter was on the ballot in the city and in the county outside the city. And we talked about this last week, kind of in the preliminary story on this. What has changed since it was rejected in 2010?
I think a lot has changed. The world has changed. It's shifted and moved. You have a different generation of voters that are engaged, and I think people are paying attention to politics through different ways. I mean, it's easier to connect right through social media. Certainly more specific to the technical aspects of consolidation or metro government. Most metropolitan governments that have been formed usually come on the ballot. There's usually a large sticking point or two. They fail because of that. It's worked out, and then they come back 10, 12 years later and have been passed. For us, I know people say this is multiple attempts, but really there's only been 2 solid attempts. In the 50s and early 60s when it was an option and it was more popular then. And then, of course, in 2010. 2010, I think the large sticking point was the consolidated or the Memphis Shelby County school systems being consolidated. That's off the table. The school system was consolidated. The municipalities of the suburbs now have their own school systems. And in a metropolitan form of government, those school systems would stay exactly as they are today.
Mm-hmm. And we should also point out that the 6 suburban towns and cities in Shelby County, those 2 remain in place. The folks who live in those towns and cities are among the voters in the referendum that is in the county outside of the city. And as I was reminded that this past week from some folks who live in Bartlett, their point in this is that even though their towns and cities remain, there could be changes in a consolidation that would affect them as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And one of the things that I would say, I think that's also a piece of misinformation is this idea of home rule. In our metro form of government, we would still be home rule, just on how the Constitution designates Shelby County and the city of Memphis. So the metro government would be a home rule charter. But yes, the idea is that change is going to happen. And what we're exploring is well, what needs to change? What needs to change is the fact that like our local economy is not growing and competing at a rate with its peer cities. From 2000 to 2018, Memphis's metro area, all 9 counties' GDP grew 9%. Nashville's grew 75%. So we are getting dominated by peer cities in the region, not just Nashville, other cities, and we need to compete. Is Nashville beating us only because it's a metropolitan form of government? No, that's an irrational thing to say. But having a metropolitan form of government and streamlining economic development and opportunity is something that we should explore.
Mm-hmm. And from covering this in 2010, the Charter Commission that you made a decision pretty quickly that they were not going to deal with schools, that they were not going to include that in their charter proposal. But they did some really heavy lifting in some other areas, some really detailed things like a 25-member Metro Council, in essence, with two groups of council members, 4 super districts instead of 2, and then 13 single-member districts. Some discussion last time of an urban services district, keeping the county fire fee, but with 1 fire department, the sheriff serving warrants and taking care of the jail and county corrections, but no law enforcement capabilities in it. Does that charter serve as a model for the work of a new commission, or has time kind of passed that work by, do you think?
I think that's something that the Charter Commission will have to decide for themselves. I mean, are there elements in there that may be reused or placed into this new document? Sure. But ultimately, it's up for this brand new body, this brand new Charter Commission, should they be voted to be formed, to start themselves. And there's a significant amount of research and exploration and experts that need to be brought in to advise them. They need to get feedback from the community, both city and county. Everybody has something at stake here. When Memphis thrives, the region thrives. If you're sitting out in the county right now and you're saying, well, I don't want anything to do with Memphis, I would say, well, the Shelby County government already is represented by Memphis, just when you look at the makeup of the body and the constitutionally elected positions. More importantly, though, is our economies are intertwined. A lot of the, Saddle Creek didn't pop up out of nowhere and become its own industry. It's there as a result of the income that's out there, and the majority of that income is earned through the industry that's located in the city of Memphis. Mm-hmm. When you box something up in a factory in Bartlett or Collierville, it's being shipped out of the Memphis International Airport. So it's great that you love your community, but you should also want to cheer Memphis on, because when we do well, the region does well.
Is there, I'll put it this way, how much opposition are you seeing from folks who hold elected office now who don't want that setup to change?
That's a good question. I don't know how much opposition I'm seeing really from the council side. We've had some meetings with some county commissioners, and what I would say is we're here to represent our constituents, and part of that duty is the duty of care and to be diligent. And so I'm not asking anybody to vote to consolidate the government today. I'm asking them to explore an idea that can help everyone, that can help create prosperity and growth. And so if someone says no to that without offering a different solution on how we're going to get jobs, growth, and prosperity into this region, then I'd be very highly suspect of why that is.
Do you think that there are groups of voters, different constituencies, who may have a stronger voice in our local politics now, whose voice might be diluted or diminished in a consolidated government?
So the demographics of Shelby County don't change, right? So the Shelby County government, the city of Memphis, the demographics don't change. So someone would have to explain to me how that's going to work if the demographics are the same. Now, I think what I'm really hearing is it depends on the structure of that government, right? You mentioned the former charter that was placed to the people. Those are things in which the Charter Commission will have to weigh in on about how the structure of government would be. How many legislative seats are there? How many is it bicameral? Is it at large? Is there ranked choice voting? Is it multi-member districts? Let's have that fight. You hear politicians so often in local governments, especially in Memphis, talk about things in which they think people want or do want. This is an opportunity to get together for 9 months and fight it out, have that debate, and give the people a choice about what they really want out of your government. JFK's got this famous speech of, it's not what your country can do for you, but what can you do for your country? This is this one opportunity to actually respond to the question of, what do you want out of your government, and put it down on paper.
Mm-hmm. Before the 2010 vote, it had been 40 years since an actual charter was drafted and voted on by voters. In the interim, during that 40 years, as you know, a lot of discussion about consolidation off and on, and a lot of times it got diffused by city and county leaders getting together and saying, okay, well, let's work on functional consolidation short of merging the two governments. Is there any more work to be done on functional consolidation ahead of this?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point too. I mean, I want to stress that this is not a magic wand. This is not going to cut people's taxes in half. This is not going to end violent crime. This is not going to take out the bureaucratic red tape that's so often associated with government. This is an idea that I think can help spur economic development. I think the city of Memphis and the county have done some good things when we talk about consolidating some functions of functional government, like looking at EDGE. But even in those processes, you still have to go to each body for certain approvals, or you have to go up to the state government, then back to two bodies. And both mayors have veto power. And so it creates, again, a lot of unnecessary burdens at going through some of these processes. And at the end of the day, the reason we know that is we have the Greater Memphis Chamber and people like Ted Townsend who work every single day to recruit industry here. And they do it through relo firms and search firms. And the feedback has been crystal clear. And Ted talked about that during the joint session of the city and the county about what the viewpoint of the city is. One of the big other things that we talk about is this, and we big air quotes, our fair share of state and federal resources. A lot of that is driven by formulas. And so consolidating our government could really help us in the formula. When you look at community development block grant programs or the TANF funds, you talk about going up and saying, so there is a lot of benefit when we talk about state and federal grants and funding resources.
Mm-hmm. And there are cases where the two mayors, the city and the county mayor, will get together with their staffs and will work out, okay, your government takes care of this countywide function and your government takes care of that countywide function. And every few years, the deck gets kind of shuffled on that as well. And that's one of the things that you talked about when you had your orientation for the council about a year and a half ago. They kind of put up a quiz show format for the new council members, the 6 new council members, and said, okay, guess if this is controlled by city government or county government. And
I'll correct one thing. It was all council members. Okay. And I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but there were some second termers that were missing a couple questions here or there. And look, I think it's less, that's a functional issue, but it's also about accountability. I mean, how many times you hear about someone that gets caught up in the cog of government? That's a county function. You try and find somebody in the county and city, and then ultimately they, as a citizen looking for basic services, feel like there's no accountability because everyone's saying that that's not their responsibility. How about one place to go, a one-stop shop for county government? I often use this when we talk about something like the Memphis Union Mission. The Memphis Union Mission has discovered that it's very difficult to take somebody from emergency shelter to a job placement in transitional and or permanent housing when they take that person off the street for that night and then try and get them into services that are located all over the city. They lose them somewhere in the pipeline. And so they've been on a mission to consolidate emergency shelter all the way through counseling services, mental health services, job training and placement services all on one campus, fully wrapped around. Why is it that we can't have government function in that way?
Mm-hmm. Because when people have a problem using these systems, their first instinct is not to try to figure out who does what. Their first instinct is to send a message to you or send a message to their county commissioner and go, I don't care how it works. I just want these services. You're
my elected representative. We get letters from notes from state reps and county commissioners. I saw Van Turner had an announcement for an exploratory for city mayor, and one of the things he talked about was investment in infrastructure. And in his commentary, He said, I get phone calls over potholes all the time, and that's a city responsibility. That's a prime example of what I'm talking about. Somebody just wants a pothole fixed, and they don't know who to go to get that pothole fixed. Like that is seemingly a fixable issue right there. Like that's low hanging fruit. And by the way, to that point, under a consolidated government, you could have a superintendent of infrastructure elected by the people. So an elected official whose sole responsibility could be potholes. Not saying that that's what the Charter Commission can do, but those are the things that they're going to get to look at and examine.
Well, we actually had that under the commission form of government, where we had elected commissioners of health, public safety, things like that. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't want to weigh in on that today. I think we let the charter. I don't want to mire the Charter Commission if we're able to get them formed. I think that those are things that need to be explored, and they need to be explored by people that are coming to the table in good faith, that have a true willingness to explore ways in which a new government could make the lives of both the Memphis city residents and the county residents better by driving prosperity and growth and economic development. So often we talk about these generational issues of investment in communities and good jobs and training. And so when we see statistically that we are getting outpaced by our peer cities in growth, we have to look at ideas. And I'm not telling people today, again, to vote for consolidation. What I'm asking my colleagues to do on both sides of the street is to form a body that's going to explore that. If they don't like what that document says or what they come up with, then come out strong against it. But don't just say no to even looking at it and giving the people a choice. That doesn't seem responsible.
Okay. While I've got you here, a final point. If the Shelby County Health Department goes to a mask mandate, which as we record this on a Thursday is still up in the air, if the county health department goes to a mask mandate, should the state try to stop it? Can the state stop it?
I've been pretty consistent about this, and I'll continue to do so. And even in my comments, I have a real issue with state intervention in local government. I think that local parties local governments should have the best interest of their people. And the governor has given the authority to the health department to do that. And so I think the health department should be granted the autonomy to do so. And I'll be always clear that state intervention in local affairs is something that I'm opposed to.
With that, our guest has been Memphis City Council member Chase Carlisle. This week on Behind the Headlines, Rory Thomas, the new president of the Memphis Medical District Collaborative, and MMDC Real Estate Director Ben Schulman on demolition and change in the medical district, as well as a $30 million loan fund. You can also hear the show on our Behind the Headlines podcast, which includes an extended conversation beyond what is on the TV episode. Subscribe to the Daily Memphian at dailymemphian.com. Subscribe to this podcast and our others at Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher. I'm Bill Dries. The Daily Memphian Politics Podcast is produced by Natalie Van Gundy.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.